we will, oh, is there any other housekeeping notes that you want to mention?
So if any of you get kicked out because of internet connection, sometimes that happens. Oh, actually, the room is going to be open, so you can just come in and I'll admit you. So it's all good.
Okay, great, great. Yeah, and so so this will be recorded, and I want to share that the spotlight's primarily on me, and if we're going to record somebody, you know, we can ask you. Is that right? How we're doing it, Tall?
Yep.
Excellent. Beautiful. Okay, so
if you don't want to be recorded, just do this with your hand and I'll stop the recording.
I see. Okay, so if you're speaking, if you want to speak, you put your hand up and she'll stop the recording and then you can just keep speaking. Great. Anything else on the techno front? Okay, I'm super happy to have an administrator. It's really, really great to have an assistant on this. Okay, what a big, beautiful group. I want to share with you the roadmap of this little journey we're going on. And it begins, oh, by the way, because I know there's multiple rooms and halls, this is the Gender Bending Expression Forum. So in case you're, you know, coming for eye gazing or self-pleasuring or something else, like, I want to make sure you're in the right room. And it's really fun to be a part of this ISTA festival. And for some of you, you know, I'll be curious. Actually, I have a lot of questions about who you are and what your experience has been so far in the festival, but we'll do that during an icebreaker. The way the journey is going to go is we're going to start with centering, like a little bit visualization to drop in, and then we'll go into a frame, you know, of gender bending and the workshop, like the conceptual frame of what we're doing. Then we'll play with allies. If you've ever played this, this is a getting to know you icebreaker community building game, followed by like a download. I'd love to share with you big picture cross-cultural concepts of gender. And so we'll be doing a little cross-cultural study, after which we will go into a deeper inquiry inside, because it's like, regardless of what culture tells us about gender, what's happening in here. I've got a gardener who's coming really close to my door. Can you hear me okay? Great. Tall, just raise your hand if it gets too loud. So the next thing is, after we do a deep inquiry in dyads as partners, then we're going to move towards like Q&A and a deep discussion. And after that, we're going to do this forum, this self-expression forum, which another thing I want to know about you is whether or not you've done Zeg Forum or Tamara Forum, because that'll share, you'll get a taste of it here. This is a very modified version, you know, virtual, but we're going to open kind of a performative space where we can actually experience our own inner opposite and have kind of a dialogue with that. So that'll be the, I guess, the dessert of this journey before offering some mirrors, some deep kind of reflections of this process. So with all of that said, here's what I want you to know. It's the why we're doing this. You know, I really value your time and your, not just your time, but your like presence. Like you're showing up, you know, to the next 3 hours. And I'm really invested in this being a transformative moment, an opportunity to like almost course correct your relationship to your inner opposite. And so it's my hope that after, you know, today's play shop, you actually are able to look in the direction of your hermaphroditic soul, to actually experience the greater non-physical part of you as an, you know, both masculine and feminine. And then by doing this, you have a richer, deeper experience of your full expression in life. And so that journey is going to look very different for everybody. But my hope is throughout this day, this little morning together, or afternoon or evening, that we get some tools and some teachings that will literally like shift your relationship to yourself. So I'm going to plug my headphones in and we'll go into a deeper meditation. So I'm going to invite you actually, instead of like, okay, I'm going to go still, to open your heart. And if you have the space, I'm going to ask you to like kind of stand up and stretch your body and shake. So we don't go into stillness to start. We're going to come into into a movement first. And you can breathe with a sigh or a sound. Let yourself make some noise. And part of the reason for movement is because we want this to be a full transmission that goes all the way up, all the way down. So it's not just participating from the head, you're actually participating from your base, your bottom. And if you're sitting, you can just undulate your hips. In fact, really waking up the pelvis with maybe some like hula hoop rolls, undulating as deep and full as you can. Good. And when you're ready, like when your body's ready, not just because I tell you to, but when your body wants to find its roots and you're going to find a seated position, and deepen into the base of the spine by actually articulating and undulating the lower vertebrae. So you're rocking the pelvis. You may deepen your breath and close your eyes, following the wisdom of your sex center. You may slow your movement and notice the subtle vibrations. Follow the exhale all the way down, down, down. Imagining your tailbone like a taproot driving down through the earth's crust with permission, penetrating the earth in pleasure, like sending that energy down and feeling the merging between the fertile soil and your roots. And you might just use the breath to imagine and feel. It's not picturing in the mind, it's sensing these roots extending down, gnarling, twisting, seeking nourishment. And notice too the minerals of the earth and the variety, like your body might need more water and your roots might go to the water table. Maybe it's fire that you need and you stretch down to the lava and the magma. Like, let your body wisdom nourish you from your connection to the earth as you exhale towards the crystal core at the center of this beautiful planet. And stay sensitive, not still, like feel the vibrations coming through the core of your own being. And if it's authentic, I invite you to rub your hands together and follow that connection from the hands. Maybe a hand on the sex center, a hand on the heart. So you can really feel the sex and the base opening in the arms of gravity, in connection to the earth. Let yourself be nourished on the inhale. It's as if you're drawing this medicine up to your sex center. And feel that ascending energy coming up towards the heart. Continuing with the image of the tree of life, you feel not just through the roots, but the trunk of the body, the core of the body. It's like a trunk, and your heart is right in the center. Feel that pumping, opening, closing. We now know, science has caught up with what shamans have known forever, which is that trees also have heartbeats. So let yourself breathe and circulate energy with the trees. We're constantly recirculating our prana with the forests and the jungles. Even if you're in the desert, feel how this air circulates through all parts of the planet, moves through all of our lungs, all of our hearts. And follow that ascending energy as it begins to branch up to the upper chakras. So we explored our roots. Now we're going to explore our shoots, shooting up through not just the neck and third eye and crown, shooting through the atmosphere. Allow yourself to dance into the cosmos, first connecting with the moon and its orbit, and playing with the other planets. Feeling the warm connection that the soul has with the sun. Helios, our sun. And just stay open to the mystery of space. Stay open to be informed by the dark energy, the dark matter that's being generated by the black hole at the center of the galaxy. Feel the potent dark energy that animates the empty space for 3 to 5 more breaths. And then feeling how this penetrates through to the deep heart, that center between earth and heaven. And allow yourself to be in both directions, expanded, extended at this moment. So often we like to go up, shoot up, or root down, but let yourself be in the center of both. And again, if it feels right to you to rub your hands together, we're gonna start to expand not just up and down, but to the left and right, which is also associated with the masculine and the feminine. So I'm gonna invite you to bring those hands both to the heart. And breathe into, in fact, wait, let's try this, which is a really fun way to access one side of the body, which is go ahead with the right hand and cover your right eye for a moment. And by doing this, you want to, and keep your left eye open so you can just kind of slightly gaze and feel that this is activating this like polarized experience, this partial truth. You know, that part of how you're perceiving the world. There's a left-right crossover in the brain. We'll get into that later, but essentially part of how you're perceiving the world is through your feminine side. And allow yourself, regardless of your biological body, to see the world from that feminine place. And take a few breaths, closing your eyes and going into your intuition, going into your inner seeing. And let the left side of your body light up with this juicy, flowy, dancing feminine energy. Notice too if there's blocks or judgment or resistance that comes up on this side. But just give it permission for a few breaths to become, as you attune with your attention, to become more alive, more welcome here in this circle. And welcome also your resistance and judgment on the feminine. Like welcome it all. Last big breath, letting it out with sound. Whatever authentic feminine sound. One more time. Woo. And then rubbing your hands together. And tuning into the other side, the other half of your body, and you want to just feel what's moving through the masculine side as you, whether it's eyes open or eyes closed, honor the presence of the masculine, the more rational, the more linear. Let yourself feel that part of you which you may be predominant in your being, or it may be that it's often behind or hidden. Give permission to whatever judgments you have on the masculine. And this isn't concepts. This isn't, you know, culture. This is you. Feel your right side of your body right now. And give it permission to join this circle in its full expression. And last two breaths with whatever masculine sound authentically wants to come through. So inhale. Last sound. And rubbing your hands together. So for closure of this kind of invocation, this centering, I invite both hands to the heart to really feel both the left and right, ventricles and the parts of the heart, but feel too how the heart has the high heart, the soul and transpersonal love, the unconditional, as well as the personal and the animal. And then giving permission to the masculine and the feminine, and feeling the cross at the center of the sacre corps. There's this cross that goes up and down like the roots and shoots of a tree, and left and right, like the deep embrace of the divine lovers, feminine, masculine, inside each of us. On the final few breaths before we open the circle, I invite you to listen to your inner guidance. So we're invoking, evoking, embodying, and we're opening a channel to the hermaphroditic soul. Even if it doesn't make sense to you or you don't know what that means, just be open to a message from the hermaphroditic soul. What does it want you to know today? Who must you be to realize your full expression? Where do you need to go, or what do you need to do to be in service to this inner marriage? Last 3 breaths. Namaste. Beautiful, thank you. So there's a number of you that just joined us during our meditation, and we're going to go into an opportunity to meet each other, to actually see who's here and share a little bit to build a community. But first I wanted to frame the play shop. And the frame, it's not the what we're gonna do, it's the high concept of why we're doing this. I'm like, where do I start? This subject is so near and dear to my heart. And I feel to start from the ascendant. I could just as easily start from the emergent, and yet I'm going to share, we all know that there's a greater non-physical self. I mean, it's really profound, especially right now, because we're not physically in each other's presence, but we can feel, so much of the subtle vibrations, how we impact, influence, and experience beyond the 5 senses, beyond the, the physical. There's multiple, not just senses and dimensions. And we all know that, that there's a coming into the form, there's a coming down. And I'm going to use the example of conception, because in the spark of the sperm and the ovum, coming together, at some point there's this alchemical, magical act of grace in which a soul enters a body. And throughout the whole development, it's beautiful in the, in the gestation period, of course, there's that time when that body's even predetermined. It's not determined if masculine or feminine, male or female. It's life force. And when birth happens, after the development, or maybe it's even when a sonogram comes in and a doctor says declares it's male or female, at that moment, there's a whole lot of cultural like stuff put on to all of us. But at the moment of coming into the world, depending on what's between our legs, then a huge part of our life gets determined. Oh, it's a girl, gonna be dressed in pink, and this is what's appropriate. It's a boy, then he doesn't cry, and he gets to play more outdoors, and is expected to be rougher, and and there's like, these cultural projections, and it's not just about culture, because we know, a lot of, it's so fun to have so many people from Israel with us, because I know it's a crazy hour there, right, Tal? But like, there is kibbutz experiments where sometimes social experiments said, let's try to do away with gender, and we'll let all the kids play with the dolls, and we'll let all the kids play with the trucks, and we'll see what happens if we don't gender them. And in these experiments, what they found is all the boys would run to the trucks in the army, and all the girls generally, with some exceptions, would run to the dolls, and and start to play indoors, and boys went out. Like, so it's not just culture, it's also in our, in our chromosomes, in our DNA, in our, like animal biology. And we know that with our hormones, like the minute puberty hits and you get testosterone, like it's a whole different game. And those of us who are going through, this gender reassignment or transition are also like, wow, I needed the testosterone to feel who I am. And so it's like, I'm not going to waste my breath on this argument of nature or nurture, right? It's like, it's both nature, it's both nurture, and in different proportions for different people. But I say that because we will look at culture a little bit deeper, cultural messages, but it's important to honor the animal. And there's what's happening in the expression. And today's about gender expression. And I want to make a really big distinction, because this isn't a class about transsexuality. This isn't a course about, how to, your gender identity or gender politics, or like now, it's about being, in transition, or even changing identity, which some of us may be on that journey, but that's not what we're looking at. What we're looking at are the shamanic, and sociological and psychological and spiritual, but shamanic, holistic perspective that we're all both. And so during the class, regardless of what your identity is, we're looking at gender expression. And I want to be clear about what gender expression is too, to not, like, this is a distinction to drop in early. This took me, like, it was only 5 years ago that I really learned this, and it blew my mind, because I personally identify, as, like, I have a hermaphroditic soul, I identify as both. I even, in these safe circles, will share that my preferred pronoun is they, them. But my gender expression is actually, long hair, lipstick, padded bras. Like, I express like so feminine. Part of that, I'll have to admit, is because in the years of going to lesbian bars and trying to look butch, it's kind of laughable. I've got this like little body. I just look like a little boy. And so I kind of gave up on that. But my true expression is very, very feminine. And I wanted to share with you that it's not about what's happening on the outside. Like, we're not talking about what's between our legs. We're not talking about how we're dressing. We're not talking about, it's the inner shape-shifting, psycho-spiritual, sense of self. And that's what I hope that everybody upgrades today, regardless of how you dress, regardless of your pronouns, regardless of, your cultural norms. What's your relationship to both, within? And so with that as the, the frame, I want to see who you are. I want to learn more about you. And I thought we'd play a little game, if you're willing. Now, what this requires, I've not done this with a group this size, so we're going to try it. Be willing for it to be like sacred messy. Like it may or may not work. It's an experiment, okay? But it's allies. Typically, the game allies would be where we were standing in a big room. We would be standing in a circle. We'd be like creating a space so that when I say something like, you know, who identifies as bisexual, bisexual people would take a step in and show themselves. And then we'd be like, yay, you know, we can celebrate that. Or who has been to an ISTA festival, or who, you know, whatever question I ask, you get to go in the center and see who your allies are. Now, we don't have the physical space, so what I'm gonna ask everyone to do is turn off your camera. Everyone turn off their camera. Go ahead and do that now. And then what'll happen is you'll kind of start disappearing. Your pictures will disappear and we'll get a bunch of names, which is fine, but I'd like everyone to turn off their cameras. Thank you. And this is important because then when I ask who's bisexual, only the bisexual people will come to the center. Okay, so I'm gonna ask Relmund to turn off his camera, even though he's not in the frame, and Katya. So a couple of people have their, you know, cameras running, that's okay. Tal, is there any way to turn their cameras off? I don't know that there is.
You can just remove them from the call and they can come in when they want to.
Okay, perfect. Would you do that for me?
Yeah.
Good. Ash, are you with us? If Ash, you could turn off your camera. Oh, that's just a picture. Got it. Great. So remove, it's okay if Ash has a picture, that's fine. Okay, so everyone is in the dark. This is so fun. Now, I believe what will happen when I ask, for example, whose first time is it to a ISTA festival? If it's your, well, hold on, wait. Yeah, let's see whose first time it is. Let's go ahead and see it. First time to an ISTA festival. Great, so you're looking around, you're like, hey, look at all these other first timers. Sweet, thank you. Okay, turn your cameras off. And with your cameras off, I now wanna ask who is an ISTA graduate? You've done at least level 1. So you're a graduate of ISTA. This is your, you know, your tribe, and look at that. Sweet. So look at all these wonderful graduates. Now, keep your camera on if you've graduated from level 2. Turn your camera off if you have not. So let's see the level 2 graduates. Oh, look at that. Fun. Okay, and then I'm curious, of course, who's done the level 3 initiation, which is, you know, really a kind of a leadership course. So beautiful. We get to see hold on, let's wait for it. So your camera's on if you've done level 3. Yay, Marissa. Good. And I'm just double checking that. Yeah, I think it goes to the front. Perfect. So the next question I want to ask is who has done a forum, whether it's Zeg forum or Tamara style, but it's the practice we're going to be playing with today. So who's done forum before? Oh, look at this. You've got some enthusiastic forum lovers. Excellent. Okay, good. Now I want you to stay if you've done a mirror. So forum sometimes does mirrors, sometimes does not. If you were experienced at forum mirrors, stay on. And I'm going to take note because we're going to use your help in this workshop today. Okay, so now everyone whose camera is on has done forum mirrors. I'm going to ask you guys, I'm kind of taking note. You know, Tal, could you write down their names?
I already have.
Okay, perfect. This group is going to help us do mirrors later in the course. That would be really great. Okay, next, turn your cameras off. Everybody's in the dark. I want to know, now we're going to get into the juicy kind of sexual identity. I want to know who identifies as straight. So if you identify as straight, come get celebrated. And it's really wonderful to see you represent. I really want to celebrate that, because a lot of times there's people who are straight by default, and I'm under the impression and experience that this is a group that's probably straight because you know yourself and you know there's options and you've chosen, you know, that. So woohoo, celebrating that. Look at that, there's multiple pages of straight people. Let's see, let's turn it off, going into the dark. And by the way, as I go into sexual identities, some of you may have multiple identities, that's fine. Everyone's turning their cameras off so that we can next ask who identifies as, and so I'm gonna go to the other side of the Kinsey pole, like where straight is kind of like a one, well, but there's a celibate piece. So we're gonna pause, we're gonna keep the recording paused, and I'm gonna ask the spotlight me so you can start the recording. Okay, I'm so delighted to get to know my tribe a little deeper. And you know, in a moment, we're gonna go deeper in to inquire about what gender means to you, but I wanna offer a cultural context. Whew. And, you know, because we're a school of spiritual, sexual, shamanic, you know, tribe and experience, I wanna start it in a sacred container, which is that one of the biggest, most damaging lies about our, and this is a cultural lie, about our sexuality is that God, for many, many, many cultures, is a man, that there's this masculine figure with a long beard who's sitting on a cloud, who's judging everyone, and that God is gendered. And so what happens when we're taught, you know, like, hey, we're made in the image of God and God is just one gender, is that it then inherently cuts off, you know, our full expression, our true nature, which is both. And there's obviously I want to say matrilineal, but I mean matriarchal cultures and goddess cultures that have put the feminine at the center. And just because all life, you know, is birthed, you know, through the divine portal of a yoni, does not mean that then God is feminine. So, you know, we have cultures saying that it's masculine, we have cultures saying it's feminine, but what we're reclaiming, you know, is that God transcends this, you know, these limited teachings about perspectives on gender. And so it is a spiritual reclamation to start to deeply look at, you know, who am I fully, and not have one part of me be shamed because of not just my religion, church, state, mother, father, culture. But it's also really powerful to get that that gender itself is culturally created. We have such a diverse tribe right here with people calling in from all over. And I love how subtle like our different messages are about the culture. And I want to say that, you know, we're going to look at a few paradigms, and some cultures are more accepting than others, but it's not, I'm not interested in the subtle differences. I'm interested in the really radical differences. First, I'm going to suggest that we consider the symbol from the East of the Yin Yang. And I don't know, Tal, if you can put that image up. But what I love, as you all imagine the Yin Yang, what I love about it is that it indicates clearly that they're inseparable, that they're doing a dance. There's motion to the masculine and feminine. Okay, so now because this comes from the East, it not only says, okay, this is of all things, not just masculine and feminine, but it attributes to the yin, the feminine is passive, And if we look at the East and we look at the messages about the feminine, that she's very passive, you know, even her feet in extreme cases are bound so that she can't move, you know, and yet it does have that intuitive, submissive, right-brained, which is more creative, and compassionate. Whereas the Yang is the masculine, the active, the more analytical, mental, you know, rational, dominant, and left brain and aggression, and it has aggression attached to the masculine. Now, I point this out because this is very typical of the Eastern philosophy of, you know, many different East, not just Buddhism. The Yin Yang is a Tao symbol, so it came, you know, even pre-Buddhist. And I want to contrast that now with the Hindu system. So if you put up the slide for Shiva Shakti combined. So what we have in the Hindu system, which I love, having a masculine and a feminine, like this is so powerful that the Hindu religion embraces all the different faces of the feminine, not just the creative, the Adya Shakti, which is that primordial feminine, but also the Saraswati creator, but the Kali destroyer. So the feminine has her own canon, and the masculine, you know, gods have their own. But this is a particular god that has both. And I'm not going to try to pronounce this god. So I'm going to ask you, Tal, if you could play the recording. Listen up for this.
Ardhanarishwara.
One more time.
Ardhanarishwara.
Okay, so part of the reason I don't pronounce it is because it's Sanskrit and it's pronounced differently all over India depending, you know, on the dialect. It's like my name is KamalaDevi, but when I'm in India, it's KamalaDevi. And then if I'm in Mexico, it's like Camila, you know, like it's just different. But this goddess really embodies that we are all both. And the fact that this religion has a deity that transmits that is such a gorgeous blessing. And there's cults, there's sects of Hinduism that really worship this Godhead in the center, and those sects usually have a high level of transgendered people in it. Okay, so why I'm bringing up the contrast of this God compared to the Yin and Yang is because in the Hindu culture, Shakti is the energy, is the active. Shakti is like not passive, not submissive, but she's the force. She's the life force. She's the birthing. She's the, you know, the creator. Meanwhile, Shiva is the all-seeing consciousness, the unwavering meditation, you know, the presence. And those are beautiful dualities that are in both of us, but it's not inherently feminine or masculine, right? Do we see how in one culture, the same quality of being active could be ascribed to a different gender, different, you know, feminine or masculine pole. So I'm going to just disclaim it right here. And this is, you know, this is from my heart. Like, we all make mistakes in this. The distinction between male, female is a biological distinction. It's not just your chromosomes or what's between your legs, but it's like, hey, biologically, testosterone, estrogen. Male, female is kind of a medical term. Masculine and feminine is the energy. And those energies are primordial forces that come from like the core of being. And so because we have cultural misunderstandings about what's feminine, what's masculine, I love to go to the kind of the core, the base. And at the core of reality is quantum physics. You know, so when we drop in now out of religion and into science, then what we come to is wave and particle. And this is so beautiful because, you know, quantum physicists are finding that like reality is not just, they thought it was particles, but then it's like waves. It's actually both. And I'm going to describe those qualities, but I want to acknowledge and bow to the Kabbalah, which, you know, the mystical path of Judaism has deep in its texts about wave and particles, but they write about it, they call it lines and circles. So the line being the particle and the circle being the wave. And what they write about lines and circles is that, like, hey, what does the particle do? It is direct. It goes forward. It doesn't like, hey, meander through and smell the roses on the way. And, you know, and so we all have both these, like, are we moving with agenda? Are we on purpose? Or are we radiating and vibrating and you know, being in the mystery? So that way of looking at it, regardless of culture, is pretty inherent to what makes us up. And I also, on the science front, you know, we do know the effects of testosterone versus not just estrogen, but progesterone, and, you know, like, just, we know the biological differences. But the reason I don't default to that science is because so often we have these souls that come in and feel like, I'm in the wrong body. You know, so there's a sense of discrepancy, like, my identity, who I am, who I know myself to be, doesn't match, you know, this frame. You know, and I want to share that I, although am totally fine being called she, her, and you know, known as a woman in the world, I have had years of body dysmorphia. Like, my self-concept, who I know myself to be, does not fit in this frame and is not at all the way that I look. But I have a little bit of, like, because of that, I have some compassion for the transgender journey of someone who's like, oh my God, this, you know, I don't even resonate with my genitals. I don't want this body. And I know in, like, a lot of different cultures, there's judgment about doing modification, surgical modification to the body to make the body actually match one's identity. But beyond the judgment, I'm so grateful to medical science that actually, you know, now more and more can really support people's full expression and having congruency, like that your soul be expressed in this form. So what I want to drop in is that this is not a identity politics course. Like, this is not about being politically correct. This isn't about, like, being, you know, transgender and although I really, really want to encourage people, like, if you want to know the depths of yourself and your own denial or shadow around your gender, to educate and become more intimate with what is happening in the transgender movement. Like, I think that's a radical new awakening at the planetary level. Like, humans are waking up to transgender rights, and that's part of our own soul reclamation. But this is a class about shamanic recapitulation. Like, we're here to reclaim the part of our soul that was denied, that was disowned, that was pushed into the shadow because it doesn't match what's between our legs. And so with that intention, I would love to take some questions, and then we'll go into our own dyadic inquiry. So let's see what questions we have about cross-cultural perspectives on gender. And I'm going to suggest, hopefully by now you know how to use your chat box, but actually you could just raise your hand and I'll see you if you have a question. I'll call on you from hands up. Okay, how about a comment? If someone's got a, you know, as a result of this download, does someone have a burning share for the group? So we're going to pause the recording for a moment and we'll appreciate John's.
Can you repeat the question for the recording?
Sure. So John's question was, or you know, I don't know what the future of ISTA is, so I can't answer that. But what John brought up, which I think is really important for everyone to hear, is that I covered, hey, cross-culturally, we have these different messages about masculine and feminine, but I didn't cover what we cover in level 1, which is the enormous gap between like the aware and mature, feminine, right? Versus the unaware, the immature, the kind of wounded feminine. And then the same with, of course, the map, and I'll stay with that for a moment just to give you guys a felt sense of that. So let's just check in about feminine and take your microphone off if you popcorn style want to share some of the qualities of the wounded feminine. So this is like the, what would be called a bitch. What else is the negative connotations on the wounded feminine? Popcorn style.
Martyrdom.
Passive aggressive.
Jealous.
Hood.
Rigid.
Competition.
Rigid.
Freezing.
Undecided.
Fawning.
Yep. 2 more.
Manipulative.
Hiding.
Good. Manipulative and, and that kind of frozen, hiding, frigid, sometimes that like overly accommodating, martyrdom. So we all know that in our bodies. Some of us know it intimately because it's describing our mothers maybe, or a mother's shadow, or our own shadow. And that's really a big part of the work in the spiritual sexual shamanic experiences, like to not project all that negative feminine stuff onto other women, but to actually eat it, to own it, to know that that's in us. Okay, so we're really saying, wow, that shadow that's in society is also inside of us. And then let's unmute ourselves and talk about the feminine, the qualities of the queen, of the, and a really, the kind of the positive white witch that's connected to the mysteries. Tell me more about the healed feminine qualities.
Brightness.
Goddess.
Good, radiant, bright.
Grace. Graceful.
Magnetic.
Empathetic.
Colorful.
Abundant.
Intuitive.
Healing.
Juicy.
Nurturing.
Powerful. Receptive.
Growing. Creating.
Heart-centered.
Brave.
Magical.
Gorgeous, yeah. She's magical and mystical and creative and radiant and like vibrating. And so we get a sense of what's possible in the higher realms of this. And you want to also own that. You want to feel it in your body, reclaim that. Like that's what we're evolving towards in our feminine, regardless of our, physiological genders. We all want to grow in that direction. Okay, so now, switching over to the other side, tell me some of the immature masculine qualities, and some of us may just have to look at our politicians, just describe them a bit, but what are the unevolved masculine qualities?
Controlling.
Arrogant.
Taking.
Lying.
Predatory.
Dominant.
Aggressive, attacking.
Rigid.
Bullying.
And take take words in, like it's not just a concept, like actually, take it in and feel it in your body. You may even want to shake and be like, that's in there because that's what's being modeled. And maybe it's paternally in my bloodline, but that it sticks, like if it's in humanity, it's in us and you can feel it.
Absolutely.
And instead, good, the absent masculine, the
Judgmental.
controlling, domineering, aggressive,
unfeeling,
unfeeling. Now, here's the key, okay? As we're saying these, we're not trying to shake them off or not be them or deny them. You're actually, when I say eating the shadow, it's like, wow, let me compost that. Let me ingest it. Let me transform it in my belly. Like, I want to feel this part of me that I've been denying and resisting and judging and projecting, usually projecting out to, like I said, the politicians. The only reason I see that is because that's, here too, it's a co-creation. But we want to ingest it to reclaim it, because the only way to heal the negative of the feminine or the masculine is by a recapitulation, an owning, and a transcending, which comes from embracing first. So as we embrace, as we mature, what are some of the masculine qualities of the king or the sage? Tell me about the healed masculine.
Benevolent.
protecting,
Safe.
supportive,
Centered.
Warrior.
Clarice, I wanted to hear what you had to say, but you're on mute.
Presence.
Devotion.
radiant,
Acquaintable.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Consistent.
Nurture.
sacred
Consistent,
masculine.
integrity, reliability,
Methodical.
methodical, accountable. Yes. Yeah. And so the masculine, holds space. He provides safety. You can go ahead and unmute yourself now, or sorry, mute back again. And he also has this presence. And so we want to find like the presence in us, and there is a divine daddy quality, just like there's a divine mama, and we want to access these archetypical qualities that come from the universe. They're primordial forces, and we want to grow into them. It's not modeling our leaders or our parents. And that's often why generation after generation, we see so much of the intergenerational trauma that gets repeated, is that we look to the people who weren't healed as our role models. And it's like, this is a moment of awakening on the planet where we want to say, okay, I want to awaken to my potential as God goddess. I want to be a co-creator in my reality. And that is to aspire to these qualities. But instead of pushing down and warring and not being these qualities, instead I got to embrace them. I've got to eat them. I've got to own them. And by owning them, I get out of the victim consciousness, which is like, oh, they're being aggressive, or she's being manipulative, or they're being, like tyrannical, or, she's being, jealous. And usually we fight against that which we're not accepting in ourselves. So this is deep, deep shadow work. We're doing shadow work on ourselves when we go within and we accept, oh, wow. And I'm the first to accept, for those of you who've seen my reality show, I have generations of jealousy. I'm not just healing as a, polyamorous spokesperson. Like, I've had so much of confronted my own jealousy. My parents separated because of indiscretions and adultery. And so I'm healing my mother and father's wounding. I'm healing my grandmother's. My whole matrilineal line was like, jealousy was a feminine quality in my culture. And I'm doing, like, in this lifetime, this work. It doesn't mean I've totally transcended it, but I have to include it in order to do the work on it. I have to own, that's one of those qualities that I'm owning instead of resisting. And so I'm going to invite you to do an inquiry now. We're going to go into a deeper dyadic experience wherein you look at, what are my feminine, what are my masculine qualities? Okay, so I'm a little bit
I can clear
beautiful.
that up.
So Tal is going to create before we do though, Tall's going to create what's called breakout rooms, and you will be given an invitation to go into the breakout room, which you have to accept. When you accept this invitation, it's going to put you into a separate screen with just one other person. And I got to give you the specific details of how to do this exercise before you go away. I see a few hands that are raised, and I want to take any questions before I go into the instructions of how to do this exercise.
So Jewel had, okay, it's down, and also Sage wanted to say something.
Great.
Yeah.
Sage.
Hey, my thought was like, actually, it's a few minutes back, so I don't know if it's relevant anymore. It was related to like bodies and like body dysmorphia and gender. So
Sure.
you may have moved past that now, and that's okay.
Sure. Well, for full expression, go ahead and share what your thought was.
Oh, thank you. I've been experiencing like for the past, I don't know, like years.
Pause for a moment, Sage. Sorry, I would love to know whether or not you want to be recorded.
I don't have a preference. It's
okay. If you're absolutely okay, we'll just keep going. Yes.
Okay. That's fine.
Great.
I've been having a lot of grief around coming, like I'm 26 and I'm coming into more like experiencing what womanhood is. And I've just always had really, really small breasts, and I have a love for like the freedom they allow me and how I can move through the world feeling like really light. And yet there's this like clawing feeling that I'm just like not a woman. I'm not fully a woman. And I just have so much grief around it, and I don't even know how to start processing it. If the answer is to like be in the grief and love my body the way it is, or the answer is to change my body, I just don't know. And I feel a sense of helplessness around it.
I'm so touched that you spoke up. I really am. And you know, you're speaking to a core wound in all of our consciousness. So like personally, just want to give you a big warm hug. And transpersonally, as we're all seekers, and we're seeking the highest version of ourselves. And the prayer that I put close to my true north, to guide me in being this awakened co-creator with reality, and not being in victim consciousness, but being like, hey, I'm co-creating my life. When I go into prayer, it's this serenity inquiry, which is like, God grant me the strength to, to change the things that I can change, the serenity to accept the things I can't change, and the wisdom to know the difference. And what you're speaking to is we are at a time in our, in culture where we can actually change if we don't like our bodies. And then we go, wow, do I accept it as it is? Do I change it? Because I don't know. And it's usually some combination of both, right? It's like, it might be surgery. It may be, like I told everyone before, I wear enormously padded bras. My boobies are nowhere near this big. And I'm just sharing this because sometimes it's like, hey, I have a trans friend who, the day that we took him bra shopping, he was a him at the time. Now they're them. They had such tears of just like, I can feel the padded bra, and that just made all the difference for them. But they had that same ongoing feeling of like, my hairy flat chest is not me, and we have an ISTA, she's an ISTA ally, I'll call them. I don't know whether or not they're on the apprentice path or where they are in the journey, but this is an ally who had a breast reduction, but then changed their mind and got breast augmentation, and then went trans again and got got them top surgery. And so they've had that dance, you know, back and forth with this. And one of the keys to alleviating the pain is the work that we can do in community. Like the more people that are in the conversation, the more people that we are like, oh, you've had top surgery, how does that go? Or you've had breast jobs, like let's talk about it. And find locating yourself in those reflections. You know, that's my invitation to all of us is like, you know, what is our expression? And then as shamans, the more work that we do in the inner world, the less the outer appearance matters. So the more marriage we do to the inner opposite, the more we can shape shift and call in these energies. It doesn't take away the personality pain. It doesn't take away, you know, the looking in the mirror and the dysmorphia of that's not me, but it does shift our center of gravity. So now we know who we are beyond the body. And there's a strong like ease and relaxation in our nervous system around this is who I am, regardless of what this form is doing. Yeah. Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful inquiry. Good.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So we are going, and by the way, Sage, you got a lot of beautiful reflections in the chats. We are going into dyads. What will happen once you're in your pod, in your, you know, two-person screen, is a two-part question. So it's a question, but it's not like you're going to answer from your head. You're going to go deep into an inquiry. Like when somebody gives you the instruction, you feel it and allow yourself to respond. The response might be dream, it might be memory, it might be thought, it might be direct download, it might be like, nah, this is silly, but you know, whatever comes through, comes through. And then what'll happen is their response, partner B, who asked the question, now only says thank you. Partner B then says question 2. So they ask the first question, they'll also ask the second question. You have a second chance to inquire. You make a response. Their only response is thank you. Then the roles change and partner A asks the first question, says thank you, asks the second question, says thank you. And then the roles change and you repeat this back, forth for 20 minutes. So it's gonna be redundant in the questioning, but every time you answer, let yourself be surprised. Like allow yourself to journey. Like whatever comes through, no judgment. And that's a really key part, no crosstalk, no judgment. All right, so the question is, and I have a hit to model this for you, especially because it's such a large group and I've not worked with so many of you. Heather, can I call on you, Heather, really randomly to be my role model for this? Okay, great. So Heather's gonna unmute herself and we're going to demo this. And you may want to pin, like when I'm speaking, pin me, when Heather's speaking, pin her. But when you're doing it, you're gonna be face to face with your partner, and I invite you to just gaze into their eyes, to slow down, to really feel, because the question is, feel your inner feminine here and now. In a moment, Heather's gonna feel that, she's gonna respond, I'll say thank you. And then the second question is, feel your inner masculine here and now, to which she'll answer, I'll say thank you. And then we'll switch, Heather will give me the question, and we're gonna do 2 rounds because I want you to see the the way that the rounds might be totally different. It's not, there's not one answer. And the longer you go with this, and I invite you to do this inquiry deeper in your life and do it for 40 minutes, do it daily. Like, it's really a powerful inquiry. We're just gonna do 20 minutes. Okay, Heather, are you ready?
Yes.
Feel your inner feminine here and now.
Movement. Feel.
Thank you. Feel your inner masculine here and now.
Planning.
Thank you.
KamalaDevi, feel your inner feminine here and now.
Mm. Mm. She's scared. You know, as you ask it, and as I receive the instructions, I feel like I should be juicy and I should be, and I'm like, no, 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 she's scared right now. That's what's coming up, is like she's blushing. Thank you.
Thank you. KamalaDevi, feel your inner masculine right now.
Mm. Oh. It's very clear to me who's running this workshop. Yeah, I feel very on purpose and honored, you know, to be doing my Dharma.
Thank you.
Feel your inner feminine here and now.
I've just got this big opening in my yoni right now, and I don't have a word for it. Like a turned onness, but it's in a very feminine turned onness. Turned on.
Thank you. Feel your inner masculine here and now.
I feel like a control, like a pushing down.
Thank you.
Feel your inner feminine right now.
Mm. There's a radiance in my ovaries. It's really like a smile, like my organs are smiling.
Thank you. Feel your inner masculine right now.
There's a tremendous spaciousness. It's like a vast acceptance of whatever wants to arise. You know, the sense of like, yeah, he is with what is. You know, he just wants to witness whatever wants to arise.
Thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful. So, thank you, Heather. The instructions are very specific and clear. Feel your inner feminine here and now. Thank you. Feel your inner masculine here and now. Don't try to change them or add words or add flair. Just stick to the form. Any questions about the procedure? Any questions about the process? Okay, good. So are we excited? All right, so what I'm gonna ask is that when you, and I know there's people who, I'll trust you to handle this in terms of if everybody can turn their camera on so we can really feel each other. And at this point, I think, Tal, the way to do it is everybody's camera is on, and those who don't turn their camera on now, stop the recording. So there's no recording. And